Lesson 30. Where in the world should you be?
Warm-up dialogue.
First, you have to find it.
If you could go anywhere in the world for free, where would you like to go?
I don't know. It costs so much to travel. I can't afford to think about it.
But free should be in your budget, right?
Of course. In that case, guess I might as well go somewhere that most people can't visit.
Such as?
Well, North Korea and Myanmar are pretty isolated places, I guess. But they're poor and the governments are very oppressive. So maybe they would not be very interesting. And maybe it would be immoral to go there under the circumstances.
But Bhutan might be a good idea. The king is very popular at home, so the people are happy. The country is small, but it has a very rich culture, and it deliberately restricts tourism so it can keep its traditions intact. Only a few people are allowed to visit every year, but they are very well treated when they get there.
That sounds like a great idea. If I went, I'd probably be the only person I know who could say that.
That's right.
But I have one question. Where is Bhutan? Questions. 1. If you could go anywhere for free, where would you like to go? 2. Would you want to go into space? Why or why not? 3. What's your opinion about staying close to home all the time?
Pictures talk. One. Question number 1. Which is more useful, an atlas or a globe? Why? Question number 2. Why is studying geography important? Question number 3. What countries would you like to visit someday? Tell us why.
2. Question number 1. Why do most countries need a visa to enter them? What would happen if everybody could go wherever they wanted? Question number 2. In addition to a visa, what other kinds of documents are necessary to travel abroad? Question number 3. Security precautions have become much stricter recently. What are some of the restrictions, and why are they in place?
3. Question number 1. Do you prefer traveling by train or bus? Why? Explain your answer in as much detail as possible. Question number 2. What are some factors other than personal preference that help people decide whether to travel by train or bus? Question number 3. What is the longest trip by train, airplane, or bus you have ever taken? How did you pass the time?
4. Question number 1. Compared to going by bus, train, or plane, what are the advantages of driving to your destination? Question number 2. What do you think the disadvantages could be? Question number 3. What if your family had a helicopter instead of a car? Would that solve or create more problems?
5. Question number 1. Is teleportation possible, do you think? Or is it just the product of idle imagination? Discuss your answer in some detail. Question number 2. If you were teleporting yourself somewhere, what would your biggest worry be? Question number 3. What new travel problems would teleportation bring about?
6. Question number 1. If you were visiting a different country, would you want to try new foods or mostly stick with what you usually eat? Question number 2. Cost aside, when going abroad, would you probably be a first-class only tourist or a backpacker? What are the advantages and disadvantages of both? Question number 3. When in Rome, do as the Romans do, is a familiar saying. When might that not be good advice?
Answer me. One, a week abroad. For my graduation present, my parents told me I could travel any place in the world for a week. Where should I go?
Why don't you go to Africa? There's a lot of wildness there.
Wild? Oh, I'm afraid.
Oh, I mean wild animals that aren't in zoos. Big animals like elephants and lions and giraffes.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, that might be very interesting. But what else would I do with my time?
There are nightclubs and shopping areas and cyber cafes just like here. But you're only going for a week. I'm sure that going on safari would take up most of the time. And why would you want to go all the way to Africa just to do what you do here every day?
Questions. 1. If you were making travel plans, would the time you have available be a major influence on where you went? Give us some examples. 2. Which is better, going someplace you've never gone before or revisiting places you enjoy? 3. Why should people want to go abroad if there are still places they haven't visited in their own countries?
2. One road for everyone. You know, I was in Los Angeles last week.
Yes, how was it?
It was fantastic. I loved the weather and the food and the ocean. And the celebrities.
What was the most interesting thing you did?
Well, I guess it was driving along Sunset Strip.
I've heard of that. Isn't it where the famous nightclubs are?
That's right. It was full of very freaky, interesting-looking people. And this was in the daytime. I bet at night it's really weird.
What's so great about that?
Well, before I knew what happened, it suddenly became Sunset Boulevard.
So?
Well, that's one of the richest areas of LA. Big, fancy mansions and cars everywhere. That's where the movie stars live.
Did you see any?
No, but I drove past their homes. It was very exciting. I've never been in such a ritzy neighborhood.
Is that all?
No, the street ends right at UCLA. All on one street. I passed through one of the most colorful scenes, one of the wealthiest and one of the smartest in the world. Questions. 1. Are there any interesting streets or neighborhoods you've heard of? What are they famous for? 2. If someone visited your hometown for the first time, what would you recommend visiting? 3. When you go shopping, are you more interested in buying something or looking around?
3. Not in the guidebook.
I guess I'm a strange tourist.
Why do you think so?
I seldom go to the famous sites in a foreign land. I usually find something else to do.
What do you mean?
Well, when I was in Copenhagen, I didn't see the Little Mermaid statue. On most days, I just took a random bus and got off in an ordinary neighborhood so I could see how the Danes live away from the tourist areas. At night, I enjoyed sitting at a small outdoor cafe and just making conversation with the locals. I had a great time too, but I didn't have any pictures to show my friends when I came home.
You're very odd.
And when I was in Rio de Janeiro, I only spent a few minutes on Ipanema. I decided that it was not different than any other beach I'd ever gone to, so I went up into the mountains and visited Petropolis instead.
I never heard of it.
Most people haven't, but it was the imperial residence of Brazil's early kings. The town is very small but full of palaces and big churches, but the people who live there are just ordinary Brazilians. I learned a lot about the country's culture and attitudes, more than if I had only talked to people in the hotel or on the beach.
Questions. 1. Which is more important on a trip, seeing the sights or learning how other people live? 2. If you are going abroad, list in order of importance the things you would most want to do. A. Go shopping. B. Visit museums. C. Eat strange new foods. D. Stay in a nice hotel. E. Take pictures of famous things. F. Make new friends. G. Go to the beach or mountains. H. Spend a lot of time resting. I. Stay very busy doing something all day. J. Other. Describe. 3. Tell us about the most interesting trip you've ever taken, at home or abroad.
4. How can they live like that?
When I visited Korea the first time, I felt so strange.
How so?
I was not used to people taking off their shoes before going inside and then sitting on the floor so much.
That isn't so bad. When I went to the US, I couldn't understand how they drove on the wrong side of the street. Everything seemed backwards. I was afraid I was going to die in a horrible accident.
Relating to people in Korea was also hard to get used to. They don't always mean what they say, since they don't like personal confrontation. It took me a long time to make sense of their indirect way of talking. At first, I mistook it for hypocrisy.
The Americans are just the opposite. They say whatever is on their mind, very bluntly. Until I got to know them better, I just thought they were very rude.
It was also difficult to deal with so much cash all the time. I get my month's pay in a huge envelope that wouldn't even fit in my bag. I was worried about being robbed.
At least the crime rates in Korea are pretty low, especially for violent crime. Maybe I've seen too many gangster movies, but I was constantly worried about being robbed or shot, not just once a month on payday.
Yes, sometimes our ideas about how a foreign country will be are a lot different than what it is really like. I probably just combined all my ideas about Korea, Japan, and China and thought that all of East Asia would be the same. I was really surprised when I didn't see women carrying big jars of water on their heads or men wearing pigtails. Instead, I found a very modern, wired society. I guess I was disappointed that Korea isn't more exotic than it is.
Yes, my preconceptions about the US were also pretty far off the mark as well. The lifestyle wasn't as fast as I'd imagined it. Everything was not just about money and sex. I found that Americans are pretty much like people from my own country after all. Questions. 1. Have you gone to another country? What was the strangest foreign custom you encountered? 2. Do you have any stereotypes about other nations? What are they? 3. What country do you think is the strangest?
Let's talk more. 1. Expectations and disappointments. I often visit places with very high expectations, which result in great disappointment afterwards. All my life I've heard about how beautiful the Taj Mahal is. But when I got to Agra, I was disgusted by the crowds, the traffic, and especially by how poorly the mausoleum is taken care of. Pollution and disrepair have made it a pale ghost of what it must have been in its prime. I had a similar experience at Pompeii. I made the mistake of arriving in mid-afternoon when the weather was very hot and sunny. The area is vast but repetitious, and there's no shade in the city, and it's hard to find water to drink. So I was hot, bored, and tired most of the time, and my personal discomfort distracted me from enjoying the place. On the other hand, earlier that day when it was cooler, I had gone to the old city of Herculaneum, which was destroyed the same day as Pompeii. But it was a smaller, richer town, and it was buried, so it is below ground level. Thus it is cooler, is easier to walk around in comfortably, and has more variety, and I enjoyed that visit tremendously. Questions. 1. Name 5 famous places you'd like to visit. Tell us why you're so interested in them. 2. Have you ever been disappointed after going someplace you had looked forward to seeing for a long time? Explain what happened. 3. What are your favorites among places that you have been to?
2. Once is not enough. Some of my well-traveled friends seem more interested in getting as many different stamps in their passports as actually discovering the world we all live in. They often criticize me for wanting to go back to places I've been to before and wonder why I don't want continuously to experience some new place. But they don't understand that places are not static any more than people are. They change constantly and become new all over again. Let me give just one example. The first long trip I took as a youth was to Niagara Falls. I had heard a lot about it, of course, and was very excited about seeing it for myself. Several years later I went back again, but the second time it was via the Canadian rather than the American side. It was like being at a different spot altogether, since the vantage point from Canada is much better. Not long after that, I visited again, but this time it was in the depths of winter instead of the height of summer. The air was not only freezing, it was intensely cold, as cold as I've ever experienced in my life. The mist from the falls had solidified into gray globs of soot-like matter, and the waterfall itself was like an icicle. The landscape reminded me of something on Mars instead of in the United States. All 3 experiences were very much unlike the other 2, and I would have missed a great deal had I only visited one time. Questions. 1. How does your own neighborhood change over the course of a year? What's different than when you first moved there? 2. Describe your experience of going somewhere you'd been before and being surprised by how it changed. 3. Is there something about your hometown that you think will never change? What is it?
3. La Dolce Vita. One of my best experiences was when I stayed with friends in Naples. I had never been to Italy before and expected August to be very hot and humid, but I was very pleasantly surprised. Although it was sunny and cloudless every day, it was perfect summer weather, with a nice ocean breeze to moderate the temperature. The city was magnificent, with its old Renaissance and Baroque architecture and its markets and outdoor cafes. It has been ruled by many races, Romans, Saracens, Normans, Spaniards, and others, over the centuries, and each has left a very strong enduring mark on its character. I was lucky that my stay coincided with a night fair which featured jugglers, mimes, singers, musicians, puppeteers, all in their strange masks and colorful costumes. Naples Bay stretches along many kilometers of beach, marina, and dockworks, and is always the scene of vibrant life. The food was wonderful. The hearty wines and grappa, the pasta and seafood, the fresh vegetables and fruits. I must have gained 10 kilograms. It was so good. And the people. Late in the evening, the families would come out to dine. They all seemed animated and loving, and had found how to enjoy the sweet life. Questions. 1. Share your memory of a wonderful place you have visited. 2. Are people the same everywhere, or are they distinctly different? Justify your answer. 3. What is your idea of the good life?
4. Almost perfect. I don't understand how anyone can fail to love Thailand. I have gone there repeatedly over the last few years and am more impressed on every visit. The smiling people are unfailingly kind. The temples and palaces are truly awe-inspiring. The Thai massages are the most intensely relaxing in the world. The beaches are wonderful, while the mountains are cool and refreshing, and the food is both varied and delicious. It is indeed paradise, and for only pennies a day. Questions. 1. Point by point, compare Thailand to your own country. 2. List 5 qualities of the perfect place to live. 3. Are those qualities the same as for the perfect place to visit? Explain your answer.
Real talk.
Many places.
I'd like to go somewhere in Asia this summer. Do you have any suggestions?
I've been to many places, and I've loved most of them.
That's why I asked you. You've seen more of Asia than anybody I know.
Okay, I'll give you some suggestions, and you can take your pick.
Wonderful.
I like Japan a lot. The people are exceedingly polite, and the whole society is more orderly than anywhere else I've been except Switzerland. But once you make friends and break through the social formality, individual Japanese are extremely eccentric and individualistic. Quite a contrast.
Anywhere in particular?
I especially recommend Kyoto. It was the imperial capital for 1,000 years and hasn't changed its cultural character in that respect, but it coexists in the same geographical space with a large modern city, so you get the best of two very different worlds.
Isn't Japan expensive?
Unfortunately, yes. But if cost is a concern, you might like Luang Prabang in Laos. It's a small city, beautifully situated in the mountains, and is crammed with exquisite temples, and it's very cheap. But you have to take a long, sharply winding road from Vientiane to get there, and it takes all day. So if you get carsick, you'd better fly.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. What about China?
The Great Wall is stunning, and like the pyramids, is something that everyone should see at least once in his life. But actually, I like Taiwan better, especially the Central Mountains, where the Aboriginal people, the Ami, still live. The road is right along the edge of incredibly steep cliffs, though, and the scenery can be pretty scary.
Any other suggestions?
I like Macau a lot, but I liked it better when it was a rundown Portuguese outpost instead of a gambling mecca. But you'll probably like the fast pace of the new Macau, especially if you make it part of a package with Hong Kong, which isn't far away by boat.
What if I want to keep away from the cities and just relax?
Then I'd highly recommend Ha Long Bay in Vietnam. I spent 3 days there on a floating hotel. We didn't go ashore even once the whole time, and I've never felt so relaxed. The scenery is absolutely breathtaking, but you'd better get there soon before the tourists spoil it.
What about Korea?
That's always a good choice. I particularly like Buyo because it is not like the rest of the country. It's relatively flat, and the lifestyle is more laid back than in Seoul. But I guess not being like the rest of Korea only has meaning if you're already familiar with the country. So if you're a newcomer and you're only going to be there a few days, Seoul is probably the best bet. But try to get out into the countryside for a day if you can, just for a nice contrast.
So many options. This isn't going to be as easy as I thought. How about Bali? What's it like?
I've always wanted to go, but somehow I haven't managed to do it yet.
Why don't we go together?
Questions. 1. Describe the perfect vacation. Plan an imaginary 5-day itinerary. 2. Imagine you work for your country's tourism agency. What aspect of your country should be promoted as being the most interesting to foreign visitors? 3. Is it better to travel alone or as part of a group? Why?
Read me.
The real value of travel. We've always been intensely curious about how people live in other lands. Some of the most enduring literature around the world deals with real or imaginary journeys to strange and distant places. But the odd thing is that, no matter how diverse are humanity's lifestyles, diets, fashions, costumes, dwellings, social customs, public behavior, political systems, religions, and every other aspect of their lives, what the traveler eventually discovers is, at bottom, we are all the same. Everything that divides us is superficial, a funny mask that we wear without thinking about it, which hides our basic, common identity. Questions. 1. Why do people spend so much time and money on travel? 2. Why do you personally think travel is important? If not, why not? 3. After you have traveled around the world, you discover that there's no place like home. What does that mean? This is the end of Chat Room for Teens 3.